So welcome, welcome. I'm delighted to see so many people here on this sunny afternoon in the middle of the summer. So thank you for being here. As I mentioned, I'm joined by my lovely co-host Judy, who is one of our instructional technology consultants at RISA, and my name is Bridget Regan. I've been with RISA for about 4 years now and living my dream job, truly. So I'm just delighted to have you all here. Just so we can see who's in the room, could you please be so kind as to drop your name and what you teach and where you're from in the chat, just so we can see who's in the house as we still have some folks coming in. All right, here's a quick snapshot of what we're going to accomplish in the hour. Yes, this is an ambitious agenda, but I am confident we can get through it. You're going to have some time to connect with one another in breakout rooms, time to do some professional reading, time to do a little bit of viewing and seeing some of the great talk moves in action as well. So that's our plan for this afternoon. So I thought we'd open with doing what's fun to do, a chat flurry, in case we have any virtual teachers in the house. A chat flurry works like this. What you want to do is respond to this prompt in your mind at first. So I'd like you to think around the prompt you see on the screen. What are some strategies that you intentionally use to engage students in productive talk? Let's activate what you're already doing, because we know you're doing some great things. So open up the chat and start typing that in, but don't hit enter just yet. Go ahead and hit that enter key and let's watch these kind of fly in. Super groups, open-ended questions. This is awesome. Keep them coming. What kinds of things are you seeing, Judy, coming into the chat here too?
Yeah, they are coming in like rapid fire. Morning meetings, math talk moves, equity sticks, restorative circles, lots of great ideas. Think, pair, shares, circle times, class dojo, random.
Yeah, it's awesome. I see super groups on there. That's kind of cool too.
Lots of questioning techniques and prompts, open-ended questions.
Yeah, this is great. Wow, lots of knowledge around partner talk, partner choice. Wonderful. Thanks so much for doing that. So take a minute and scroll through so you can see some of the things that are there as well. All right, let's move on now. We want to take a minute. I love this graphic, and Judy in a moment is going to drop a link to this graphic in the chat for you. And in a moment, you're going to get a chance to go into some breakout rooms. And I'd like you to really process what you see on the screen. You know, what are some things that stand out to you? And maybe what do you find surprising? A couple that I'd like to point, or one that I'd like to point out before we go, is in the bottom kind of left corner in the blue. In many cases, the teacher decides what information is valuable. So I'd like you to consider these statements and the impact that it has on talk in the classroom and our practice. So in just a moment, Judy is going to move you into breakout rooms. You're going to be in small groups, so hopefully you'll be able to have a conversation with some colleagues. So take a minute, of course, to introduce yourself, and then go ahead and talk. Before you move into that breakout room, make sure you have access to the document. Judy just dropped that link in the chat, so make sure that you can open that. All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. I know we had a few people join us, so during that activity, if you're just coming in, please make sure you grab that sign-in link, and Judy's also going to put the handout for the graphic that you see. That's what we were just processing in our rooms, and I'd love to get a couple of voices to kind of hear what surprised you as you saw this. Is there somebody that would be willing to share, to unmute and share?
The most surprising one we noticed at the end said on average classroom discussions occurred 1.7 minutes for every 60 minutes. And we're like, that's kind of insane.
Yeah, that is 1.7 minutes. That's kind of frightening, isn't it? Right? What else? Who has another one they'd like to lift?
Hi, this is Dawn. trouble with my audio, but and trying to see the form, but I'm looking at the form right now. We had a really good discussion about what we do. But one thing that I'm looking at right now, it says in many classrooms, students aren't allowed to talk unless they are specifically invited to do so by the teacher. Sometimes I think that is okay, but there are many times where you need lots of opinions. They need to understand that their voice matters and that it is okay to say things. Appropriately, of course, but that's not their, that's how they have to learn how to speak to us, to one another. So I mean, I think that is okay to let them, you know, when it's specifically invited, but I think free talking is amazing because you hear so much and learn so much too.
Thank you so much for lifting that, Dawn. And I'm seeing a few more things in the chat. Malia is telling us about adultism, right? In many cases, the teacher is deciding, right? What information is valuable. And really, we want to move away from that. Too often our answers are right or wrong. Think about the impact that that can have on our classroom. So I wanted to leave you with this. This is a great graphic. I encourage you to, whatever your role is, if you're a classroom teacher, to take this and share it with your team. If you have PLCs, share this with your PLC team and have discussion. If you're in a leadership role and you have the opportunity to have some influence over your back to school PD, this is a great, you can just, a talking tool. You could make a physical copy of it or put it up on the screen like we did, and just engage in some conversation around it. So hopefully you find that as a powerful tool. All right, so let's step into for a few minutes. So why talk? Why, I think that infographic started to make the case for that a bit for us, certainly, but we're gonna dig a little deeper. And Judy is going to drop for you in the chat a PDF of this article. Oh, and thank you, Jill. I see that you talked about the importance of wait time, right? And of course, someone also listed the idea of questions, right? That we put kind of time constraints around our questions and often expecting that one right answer, right? Where we're kind of pigeonholing kids. So we need to really try to move away from that and become aware of our own practice. So this article here by Elizabeth City is something that we're going to process for a few minutes. So Judy just dropped the link in the chat for you. Please make sure that you can access it because you'll need it for this activity. And what you're going to do is we're going to move into breakout rooms and you see what's on the screen. So if your phone is handy, you might want to snap a picture of this so you can remember what your task is. If you're in rooms 1 and 2, you're going to read pages 11 and 12, 3 and 4, page 13. You'll kind of see how I have the article chunked. 5 and 6, pages 14 and 15. And if you're in room 7 or 8, start at the bottom of page 15 and read until the end. You'll notice how the article is sectioned off for you. And this, you're going to be able to engage in some great talk around this. So you're going to move into breakout rooms. Judy's going to give you 10 minutes in the breakout room. You'll probably need 5 minutes to read first and then engage in the talk. And then we'll see you back in 10 minutes. Please make sure that as a group, you decide on one key point that you want to share with the other groups, because we will do some sharing as a group, whole group, when we come back. Thought we could take a couple of minutes. Hopefully you designated a spokesperson. Do we have everybody back, Judy? Oh, looks like they're still filing in here.
Not yet. We've got about half people back.
I can go first since I'm the only one in my group. So if you want to consider me, I'll give a little bit of something.
Sure, as soon as we
Looks like we've got everybody.
all right, so groups that were able to read that beginning section. Dawn, you wanted to kick us off. What's something that stood out to you from that page 11 and 12?
Well, that very first page that I saw, the one thing that I noticed was it says, when I get out of my way. When I get out of the way, that's when the students have a lot to say. So I need to step back as a teacher to let that happen. And also, it also stated that we're afraid as teachers of losing control. And I believe that's true. That we don't want to look or sound stupid in front of the students, but then the students also have a fear of looking stupid, of not knowing exactly, what to say or how to say it, or even, like it said, to do the schooling part, to play school.
Yeah, to play school, right? So it's about us letting go. I'm seeing some nods, those of us that have our cameras on. I purposely don't have the screen sharing right now so we could see the nodding. So those of you, I've seen lots of nods, Dawn, lots of agreement with that, right? We need to get out of our own way. Thank you for that. How about somebody else from who did that page 11 and 12?
Well, we just talked about how once you let the students talk, how it just opens up windows of perspectives. And one woman in our group shared this comment that a student made that was one that we would never have considered, at least in our group. And I'm always blown away how when they bring in perspectives that, you think we're always thinking we know more than them, but we don't, and we always can learn something and a new way of looking at something. And just to, okay, you saw that. What else? I don't know. It just opens up the doors for a discussion to go somewhere else. But we were talking too how we always have that time that's a restraint, and that's why I get scared of letting students go off, because then you're afraid of bringing it back all the time. I wish we didn't always have that, that constraint. Like, if I get off topic, we're going to get off and we're going to be behind, so that holds us back in so many ways.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. I have some tools, I think, to help offer that around that idea of setting really clear expectations for talk and for discourse that might be helpful for you. How about someone from our next room? I'm watching our time here. Someone from room 13 or page 13?
Hi.
Hi.
I was in group 3, but we talked, basically our part was about how there's like 4, they call them fulcrums for it to be like a successful discussion. And so they talked about like safety, having students feel safe, challenge, authentic participation, and ownership. And we talked really about the idea of authentic participation, how it's about students not just like saying something to like gain a participation point, but like to actively like listen to what other people have to say and respond to it. So that was something we talked about in our group.
Yes. The group I was with yesterday, we were doing snaps for people. So you're getting lots of snaps for that one, girl. Love it. All right. How about from our last group, page 15, or another group, someone else that has a burning thing that they want to share? Let's do that last group first. Page 15. Bring us home.
Tina. So in our group, we were talking about allowing an opportunity for kids to have, like provide them with text, whether it's a paired text or a level text, but give them something that they can refer back to. They need something to, when they're giving their opinion or sharing like their reasoning of something, that they can reference back and finding that evidence to share. But it also helps for those that are a little more less confident in speaking in front of others, something that they can refer back to. And that the text doesn't always have to be textual print. You can give them different variations, such as like maps and charts and different illustrations in order, to engage them in that topic of conversation.
Love it. You all could be leading this session. That's what I've just decided. We're going to talk about some of those things with text in just a minute and see an example. All right. For sake of time, folks, we are going to move on. I know that there's probably more wonderful things for us to share, but we do only have an hour. So just a few more things for your consideration. Some things that productive talk allows students to just take a moment and process what you see on the screen here. So it really can allow our students to share their thinking and really can uncover maybe some misunderstandings that they might have and or their understanding. So it can really be a formative check for you. So if you're looking for some reasons as to why you should do it, that one is huge. It allows the multiple viewpoints. I think we heard that from someone just a few moments ago. It allows us to use evidence to support their thinking. And we know the importance of that, not just with our standardized tests and our accountability, right? We're always trying to teach students to do that, but that's just a good life skill, right? To be able to back up their thinking, to authentically use that academic and content vocabulary, allows them to practice listening and of course to develop social skills, many of these things which you already lifted and read about. And of course, one of our, I think as teachers, one of our go-to talk moves, and I think this came up in the beginning, was this idea of turn and talk, right? And well, here are a couple of research points for you around that. So Just follow along as I read the first one. So turn and talk allows all students to participate in a response, right? So one of the things that was on the consider this was that back and forth, kind of that ping pong QAR relationship of questioning between the teacher and a group of students. And the research has found when that happens, right, we're typically calling on the kids that already know the answer, right? The ones that are quick to respond. And so by not engaging in things like turn and talk, some kids are missing that opportunity. So here's a reason to do that, right? And the research actually shows this, that they're going to have more opportunities to respond and therefore deepen their content learning, across all content areas. And then the second one is that collaborative learning routine, this turn and talk that promotes the use of new content and conversation. It really improves expressive language skills. And you can see a couple of studies there by Beck and others, and then Jones, Levin and Levin in 2000 that really support that. So if you've moved away from turn and talk, hopefully this is going to encourage you to get back to it. And so Judy's going to drop in the chat for you now a turn and talk guide for you. And I think you're going to love this. So you can access it either in the chat or if you want to use that QR code, if you're accessing things on your phone. So I'd like to give you a moment to open that. We won't have time to process this as a group, but hopefully you can see it coming up now. Judy, are you guys able to see? Did it open the guide?
Yes, we can see it.
All right. Just want you to get a sense of what's here. It's pretty extensive. All right, so it kind of gives you a definition of what is turn and talk, some toolkits for you to actually watch, some of the research, the routine. So if this is new to you or you have some new teachers that you might be working with, this gives you really a step-by-step how to do it, how to partner kids, the importance of modeling. I mean, it's really quite extensive. And then they even give you some examples of what it looks like. So hopefully you're going to find that resource valuable. That was one of the promises as you signed up for this session. I wanted to make sure that you were getting tools. So let me get back to where we were at. And now we're going to make some connections to literacy. And so this was lifted earlier too, as I said, the power of these type of sessions coming across so many people. The answer is here. You guys have the answers to how to increase this. And because someone said, I give them something to talk, text to talk around, right? So if we turn to the literacy essentials, if you're not familiar with the MESA GELN literacy essentials, this is one of the 10 essentials. And in it, the key header at the top talks about read alouds, right? So these are practices that should be happening for every child, every classroom, every day. And the literacy essentials are all based on research and they're curriculum agnostic, meaning they're not saying that in order to use these essentials, teachers have to use a particular program or even approach. But these are moves that the teacher should be making, and read aloud is one of them. And then if you'll notice the bullet point that's highlighted here, one of the key things that the research tells us to do is that we should be having higher order discussion among children and the teacher before, during, and after reading. This is considered a research-based and high leverage practice. Judy dropped both of the essential links for the K-3 literacy essentials and the 4-5 for you in the chat if you're not familiar with those. But what we're going to do now is see this in action, right? We're going to watch some of these talk moves in action. And so before I hit play, let me set up the clip here for you a little bit. What I'd like you to do is, as you view the clip, you'll notice that goals for productive discussions in the classroom, some things that we want to be looking for along the left-hand side. Looking for wait time, for turn and talk. Are you hearing some revoicing? Meaning saying things like, are you saying, or I hear you saying? Do you hear the teacher using prompts like say more? An example of that would be, can you tell me more about that? Do you see or hear the teacher saying things like, who can repeat what so-and-so said? Do you hear the teacher press for reasoning? Why do you think that? Or what's your evidence? And do you hear the teacher help students engage with the reasoning of others? What do you think about that? Or who can explain what this student said when she said this? So Judy has dropped, I think, the link for this discussion as well. It's called The Goals for Productive Discussion in the Classroom. So if you know how to do split screen and you want to have that handy, I'd like you to watch for evidence of this as we watch. And Judy, if you'll let me know if folks can hear the clip, that would be great. Here we go.
Actually, we cannot hear it right now, Bridget.
You guys could not hear that. I'm sorry, just a moment. Try again.
In this classroom, the class will be discussing a book they read earlier in the day.
Me, Jane, tells the story of the scientist Jane Goodall, and it introduces students to her as a young child and teaches them about her dream of becoming a scientist and moving to Africa and studying animals in the wild. So when teaching them how to have a text-based discussion around a book, I typically start by reading the book. I tell them what the focus is for the book, and then I stop at certain stopping points and ask an open-ended question such as, what was Jane's dream? And then once I have one student answer, I typically like to ask who can add on to that or encourage them to go back in the book and pull evidence from the book. I often implement turn-in talks where I might ask an open-ended question and have them turn and share with a friend. And then after everyone has had a chance to share their thoughts, we turn back as a whole group and they get to hear everyone's answers as a whole group. Since we were revisiting the book, I decided this time that I was just gonna show them the cover, remind them what the book was about, and tell them that today I wanted to focus on the author's purpose. Why did the author write this book? What did he want us to know about Jane? So put your eyes up here. Last Friday, we read this book titled Me, Jane by Patrick McDonnell. And this was a biography that Patrick McDonnell wrote about Jane Goodall. So we learned that Jane Goodall was a scientist who studied chimpanzees and the environment. So today I'd like us to have a discussion about what information Patrick McDonnell wanted us to learn about Jane Goodall. Before we start talking about that, we have our sentence stems up here. Can you put your eyes over by the sentence stems? And we use sentence stems to have a discussion with each other. So I'm going to read the first one just as a reminder. Can you repeat it after me so they're stuck in your brain? Can you say more?
Can you say more?
What do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
Can you help me understand?
Can you help me understand?
I agree with you because.
I agree with you because.
I disagree because.
I disagree because.
An example from the book is.
An example from the book is.
So when you're having a discussion today about what Patrick McDonnell wanted to teach us about Jane Goodall, we're going to ask that you use some of these sentence stems to talk with each other. Some ways that I prompt for discussion and keep discussion going are with sentence stems. I might say, can you show me an example of this? Or who can add on to that? Or who agrees with so-and-so? So, raise your hand if you can share one thing you think the author wanted us to learn about Jane Goodall. What is one thing, Cleo, that we learned about Jane Goodall in this book, Me, Jane?
Jane Goodall likes monkeys.
Jane Goodall likes monkeys. Jane Goodall likes chimpanzees. Who can add on to that? Louis?
She liked to have some animals, and she wanted to be like a jungle watcher for chimpanzees.
She wanted to look and watch chimpanzees in the jungle. Ashlyn?
She helps them live in their habitats because they're almost extinct.
We learned from the nonfiction book we read that chimpanzees are endangered. So Jane Goodall helps keep them safe in their habitats. Caroline?
She sat in a chicken coop for 4 hours waiting for a chicken to lay his egg.
Let's look at that example from the book. Caroline shared that Jane sat in a chicken coop for 4 hours waiting for the eggs to hatch. Here she is, waiting for the eggs. And she observed the miracle. Who can add on? Who can tell us more? Michael?
She went in Africa so she could study the chimpanzees because she really liked chimpanzees, and her friend was in Africa, so she decided to go with her.
Maya, do you remember that she wanted to go to Africa to study the chimpanzees? Let's look at that page in the book. I think it was later on in the story. Oh, here it is. Jane dreamed of a life in Africa too. What else did Patrick McDonald want us to learn about Jane Goodall? Waylon?
Is she wants to learn more about the chimpanzee.
I think it's a great idea to encourage kindergartners to discuss text specifically with one another, because I believe it truly promotes the love of learning. And the more they see their peers interested in a text, or the more they feel they can contribute to a conversation surrounding a text, the more they believe in themselves as a learner or a reader. And I think the more they want to read when they see that reading teaches them information or includes interesting topics. I think it just is a good motivation for them as they grow older. So Stefania, what's an example from the book that shows us that Jane's dream was to work with animals?
The drawings.
Her drawings and her journal. Who agrees with Stefania? You can use the sentence stem. I agree with you because. Ashlyn, can you use that sentence stem? Say, I agree with you because.
It looks like she cut out stuff and she drew stuff.
Why did she draw all these different pictures?
Because she loves studying animals.
Because she loves studying animals. Who can give us another example from the book? Caroline?
When she wanted to see the chickens, after she saw the egg hatch, there was a bunch of baby chicks.
Mm-hmm. So what is that picture where she saw the eggs hatch? What does that tell us, Caroline, about Jane?
That she wanted to study the animals.
That she wanted to study animals, such as chickens. My hope is that they can all work together to have a discussion surrounding the big picture. What was Jane's dream? How do you know? What page could you find that on? And if they can do this during whole group read-alouds, my hope is that when they're reading with each other, whether it be partner reading in the library or during guided reading groups with me, they start to become more willing and able to lead these discussions about texts on their own.
Learn more at literacyessentials.org.
All right, let's take a minute and unpack that. I'd like to go back to that productive talk. What I'd like you to do is put in the chat, what evidence did you see of her using some of the things that we looked at on the productive talk chart? I'm going to pull it up so it's a little bigger for you to see. And go ahead and drop that in the chat. What evidence did you see of her? And just go ahead and drop them in. Did you see things around goal 1, helping students clarify and share their thoughts? What evidence did you see of those things? If you remember her specific phrase she used, or yep, she did use say more. Tell me what you mean by that, right? She had some wait time in there, I think. She used revoicing. I'm going to slide this down and see, and tell me if you see any evidence of any of these goals 2, 3, or 4. You recall if she said any of those things? Go ahead and drop those in the chat. Say more. Who can tell more? Yep. Let's look back. Asking students if they agree or disagree, right? And we have to keep in mind the age of these kiddos too. Kindergarten, right? So there was quite a bit of scaffolding happening, but yet they could do it. Certainly we can see that they can do it. Even this is why I love this clip, even all the way down in kindergarten, right? If we provide them with the tools. So hopefully you'll find this guide here helpful for you in your planning. I would encourage you to keep this near your lesson plans and maybe near your area where you gather students for read aloud, because then it'll be kind of front and center for you. All right, a couple more key points around read alouds, right, that I think we've already probably gleaned, you know, the idea of using those really powerful picture books. And I'm sure we can agree that the one that she selected, that Jane Goodall, was a powerful book for them. They certainly had things to say, right? She modeled her thinking, right, being intentional and finding ways to incorporate that. All right, here are some more tools that we wanted to leave you with today. So we did see the teacher use the sentence stems. You saw that she had them on an anchor chart, right? Probably with kindergartners. I'm making the assumption that she built those over time and introduced them over time and added those so that that was a co-created chart. But you could also go about it in this way. You see the speech bubbles that are here. So Judy's going to drop in the chat for you a PDF of this sentence stem handout for you that you can, that's in color, that you can print and laminate and use. You could put them, I've seen teachers put them on rings for students. So when they're working in small groups, they have those prompts. I've seen teachers put them on one sheet so that they have a sheet to look at as you introduce them. I saw a teacher once give each student different cards with different prompts on them. And then their task that day during the discussion around the common text was to try to use that prompt and to use that sentence stem. So there's so many ways that you can use that. And then earlier, I know that we talked, someone in the beginning lifted the idea of, this takes time, right? And really setting those expectations, that when we as teachers need to be able to let go, right? That we're afraid sometimes, as we read in that article. Well, this can be something that can hopefully help ease your fears as a teacher. And that would be really setting those clear expectations, right? So that when you do start to veer off track, you can come back to something like this. If you wanted to use, this exact chart, you could. Judy's dropped that in the chat for you. Or you could do something that's co-created and kind of help lead students to coming to these ideas. But I have found in my own personal experience that when I took the time to set the expectations with kids, when we would veer off sometimes, it would just be a matter of returning to that. And sometimes the kids would catch me. I taught fourth grade students and they would catch me and say, wait, Mrs. Regan, we kind of said we were going to stay on topic here. That's our agreement for number 3. So they would catch me as well. So hopefully those are great tools for you. And believe it or not, we're already like close to the end, Judy. These hours go too fast. There's so much more. Hopefully this session has inspired you to try some talk in your classroom and maybe hopefully you've walked away with at least one new thing. So I'd like to give you a moment to think in ink. So if you have a piece of paper or sticky note or something near you, could you please respond to that prompt for a moment? I'll be quiet for a minute and just let you think, what's one action that you're going to take? And I want you to write it, because if you write it down, you're more likely to do it. So I want it to be more than just the chat. I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat in a minute, but first I want you to write it so it's on that sticky note with your things. So go ahead and think for a moment, what's one action that you're going to take? All right, and when you're ready, go ahead and drop that in the chat. We're going to make our commitment public, right? When you make that commitment public, you're also more likely to do it. All right, I see some things coming in the chat. Sentence stem, somebody's going to try. All right. Empowering student voices. Try to be specific with what you're willing to do. Explicitly teach those sentence stems using the expectations for discourse, right? Being intentional. These are great things. Judy, are you see these coming in? This is great. Modeling. using that turn and talk. More opportunities for discussion. Wonderful. Well, we want to thank you, Judy and I, for both of us want to thank you for being here today. We know we gave you a lot of content. Our hope is that you'll be able to take this content and pay it forward, right? As I mentioned at the onset, perhaps go and talk with your principal about this session that we had, and maybe you can use that productive talk article around, what meaningful talk allows you to do. The article by Elizabeth City, that would be a great staff read. You could use the Consider This for some of your back to school PD. So many possibilities. Give the sentence stems. You could share that same video clip. We'd be happy to partner with you. So thank you so much for being here today. We're happy to stay on the call for a few minutes. There's not a sign out sheet. There's one other thing that I wanted to show you. We do have more Blitz sessions coming up, and here they are. So we're here on Tuesday, Tuesday the 2nd, or actually Wednesday. Gosh, today's Wednesday. This was our Discourse one. I'll be back tomorrow doing a vocabulary focused one with interactive read alouds. There's still space. You're welcome to sign up for that. And along with any of the other ones that you see across the content areas. Judy dropped that link in the chat too. And again, those are open to any of your teacher and educator friends. So please share. We're excited about this month long of learning.